some of my friends say that Janet Vigner is a strong person, and yet I don't think I'm that strong. But some people tell me I am. What I like best about Janet Vigner is she's always on time. If not, usually she's 5 or 10 minutes early. The most important thing about living is when you wake up in the morning and you're still breathing and you've got a very busy day in front of you. I just felt with the pictures and now what he's got me telling you that that's something to keep for the future, that the pictures may fade and disappear, but the video hopefully will go on for a long, long time. That maybe my great-great-great-grandchildren may look at it in the future. Hi, oh, how are you today? Come on in. Nice to see you. What a lovely day it is today, eh? My name is Janet Gwendoline Vigner, nee Scholler. And I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, August the 24th, 1924, at 12:05 a.m. My mother's name is Janet Martin, and she has a twin sister whose name was Annie Martin. This is my dad, Bert Scholler. This is me, Janet, 2 years old. This is my grandfather, Bumpa, we called him. This is my mother, Janet. This is my grandmother, Janet Martin. This is my mom's youngest sister, Auntie Mary, who's holding my new brother, Bert, who'll be about 2 weeks old, I guess. And this is my dad's sister, Auntie Gwen, who would have been up from Seattle for the party, I guess. My mom was a very kind and gentle person. I never really saw my mom get furiously mad or anything like that. And of course she was brought up, she had dad to look after and be by his side all the time, which she was, and she had 4 children to worry about at home. And this was certainly, you know, all the mothers stayed home with their kids. They were not working mothers in the 20s, 30s, and even the 40s, you know. And Mum was always there for you. I always would want to say that, yeah. And they came across, Mum came from Glasgow, Scotland. She came out from all by herself, as a matter of fact. I think it was about 1910. Her family came out in 1909, but they found out she had a goiter problem. So she had to stay behind and get her an operation, and she stayed with Auntie Tan, her name was. But I often think what a proud, strong woman my mother must have been to come out from Scotland to Vancouver all by herself. But of course then Auntie Annie married Robert Lovegrove. Don't ask me when, although isn't it funny, that's one wedding I remember being at, because I was only maybe 6 years old when they got married, so. And then of course my dad, I really don't know what year he came to Canada, but he came with his dad. I would probably say maybe 1910s, because Dad talked about being here in the teens. But he came from London, England. So I always felt that I had good blood in me. One London, England, one from Glasgow, Scotland, and I'm afraid I am definitely a British Empire person and that sort of thing. And that's where they met, in the store there, and got married in November the 4th, November the 5th, 1923. My brother's name, of course, was Bert Scholler, named after his dad. And my dad's actual name was George Gower Bert Scholler. And Bert was spelt B-I-R-T, which was his mother's maiden name. And Dad was always called Bert. Always. And of course he always was very proud of the fact he had a mustache and he never shaved his upper lip, never. So I guess that's Dad's claim to fame. My brother was born almost 2 years later, and by that time they decided they had to get a house, so then they went out to 2841 Triumph Street, where they bought a four-room bungalow. Not when that's what it was, where we stayed there. And then 2 years after we moved in there was when my sister was born. My sister's name is Annette Wilkins. And Shirley Dean was her name. She was one of the head nurses over at Surrey Memorial Hospital. Worked there for a long time, and they have a senior center over there, which is called the Shirley Dean Pavilion. So I feel very honored that my sister had that honor given to her. But Dad in his life had been a labor leader here in Vancouver for many, many years. He was known as Burly Bert. He was with the Teamsters Joint Council number 31, the milk drivers number 464, and the bread drivers, I forget their number. But he also, remember when we were kids, he'd get phone calls in the middle of the night from taxi drivers who had been picked up drunk and were in jail. Well, first few times Dad would go down and bail them out. But as time went by and he's still getting these phone calls, he decided to, well, just let's leave them there. And I think that one night in the drunk tank may help make these guys sober up and never do it again. So it worked out that way fine anyways. I grew up in the West End of Vancouver. I was born in Bute Street Hospital, which used to be a private hospital at the corner of Bute and Robson. And then after we moved out to Triumph Street, 4 years later, my youngest sister, Shirley Ann Scholler, was born. And so there we lived until, well, I was about 12 years old when this happened. We moved over to 2655 Turner Street. We exchanged houses with a Mr. and Mrs. Perkins because their son had left home. So they moved into our bungalow and we moved into their two-story house. I had gone to Hastings Elementary School, Templeton Junior High School, and Britannia Secondary School. I always feel I was very, very fortunate in my family because when I was a little kid, my grandparents had a cottage up at Horseshoe Bay. And this would be back in the 20s. And I can remember going up there, and once my dad had to sleep out in the front porch because the place was full, and we thought that was pretty neat because Dad's sleeping out there with no windows, no screens on them. And we've got pictures of them in their old bathing suits in the water, and we'd see the old PGE train coming in and coming through and that sort of thing. We had a lot of I remember, I know I was only 3, 4, 5 years old, but I remember Horseshoe Bay with many, many happy times up there. And then Mom and Dad went down to Eagle Harbor, which is about 2 miles from Horseshoe Bay, this side of Horseshoe Bay. And Dad bought a lot right at Eagle Harbor Road and Marine Drive, where in the meantime, down on the beach, they rented cabin number 3 from Ernie Smith, who owned the beach there. And we would be in this, and we had a lot of fabulous summer fun there and on the beach because the beach was just across the street from the cabin. Right. So Dad got a shell. He just had a shell of a place built, 24 by 24. And inside, Mom put up bed sheets to divide it into 2 bedrooms and one big room. And then we had a big stove in there that you put 3-foot logs in to give you your heat and hot water. And then for the first few years, we had to go out down the trail in the bushes to get to the outhouse. I must admit, I miss Birch Bay because we had a cottage up about 2 blocks from the beach. So this type of weather, a frosty, sunny day, we'd love to go down the weekend. The cottage would be frozen practically, but you get the old stove going and the kettle boiling. And when we went down there, the big meal would always be pork and beans and spaghetti with fresh white bread. After I graduated from high school, we went down to the YWCA where they started what we called the Friday Night Club. And that Friday Night Club lasted for several years. And we met every Friday night. During the war, we used to put dances on and that sort of thing. Yeah, the one sad time in my life at that time was in December the 8th, 1955. My dad passed away kind of suddenly from heart problems, which he had been suffering from. which fortunately Mom had an autopsy done, and it was found that when he had been a teenager over in Germany, where he was there for a short time, he got rheumatic fever, and that's what had screwed up his heart valves. In the world today, he probably could have had an operation and come through it with no problems, but in 1955 they didn't know what they know today. So, and Dad was only 66 when he passed away. Yeah. No, I was the one who was looking after Mom and all her stuff after my younger sister died. See, Shirley died in 79, Mom died in 87. So in that period of time, even before that though, I was the one, who I'd pick up Mom and bring her home to my place for the weekend. And my story about my mother is, I was at Christ Church Cathedral, January the 2nd, 1987, attending the memorial service for Cleta Herman, who had been the executive director at the YWCA, my boss. She was the one who called me in her office to tell me my husband had passed away years before. So as I'm going into the church, there's people in front of me, and I don't really know if they're, and I'll swear somebody pushed me so that I fell on the steps, wrecked my stockings, and I fell hard too. And I got up and I turned, and there wasn't a soul behind me. So I thought, you think, gee, that's strange. But so I went in, did the service. My knee was pretty sore, but I did stay for the service and talk to other people. And then when I got home, about an hour after I got home, the doctor from Burnaby Hospital phoned to tell me that Mom had passed away. And I often think that that push was given to me by Mom as she was leaving this earth. I really do. The only thing I don't like about death is that you go by yourself. The idea, because when you come into the world, your mother, your father, your doctor, your nurse is there. When you die, sometimes there's nobody there when you die. And then therefore, what happens when you get to the other end, down this long white tunnel that they talk about? So
you feel alone?
Yeah, I'd feel very lonely when I die. And if I don't know, I read in the paper sometimes about how all the children were with him when he died, and I'm thinking, I don't know whether I want all my family with me when I die. Because, it's kind of a sad experience for them, and that sort of thing. My funeral?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, there is a spot down at the Victory Memorial Gardens down King George Highway, next door to my husband for me. And I want to have a full-fledged funeral. None of this memorial service. I want to be there. Whether we have an open casket or not depends what I look like. My sons, I know, are not too thrilled about open caskets, having had one at their Auntie Shirley's. But if I look all right, why not show me off to the world? That I'm at peace with the world. And I also want, I would very much like to have the music of Glenn Miller played at my funeral, namely the song Sentimental Journey at the end of the service. And I hope, I do not want funeral dirges or sad music or anything like that. And I just want everybody to have basically a good time, because I realize you're all going to miss me for the first week or two, maybe. But life goes on. And believe you me, I fully intend to be sitting up top, keeping my eye on all of you. If I see any of you getting into danger, I'll do my best to get you out of it. But remember, most of that has to be done by you. Don't get into danger in the first place. And remember, pop down to the cemetery now and then and bring me a rose or two. I would appreciate that. If I was to live my life all over again, I really don't think I would change anything in it. I've been quite happy with everything I've done. I'd probably add more, but yeah, I wouldn't change anything what I've done.
I
some time, I'll be with you to change your name to mine. One day in May,
my hero is Winston Churchill, is the very first man that comes to mind, because I think we wouldn't have the world today if it hadn't been for him and what he did way back in World War II. In '43, I joined the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service, which was the thing. My mom and dad were sorry to see me go, but they were quite happy that their daughter was going. And I was in the services for 3 years. I was stationed in Vancouver for a year so I could live at home, because they were short of barracks here, and I worked in the Fleet Mail office down on Howe Street, where we sorted the mail and did all those things. And as part of that, I got sent down to La Pointe Pier on the waterfront, where I worked with BADRPC, which is the British Admiralty Pacific Coast, because this is where they were bringing in these flat tops that had been made in San Francisco and Los Angeles and brought up here to Canada for finishing. And of course, this is where all the British sailors had been flown in to get on the ships to sail them back over to England.
A flat top?
No, an aircraft carrier, yeah. And of course, this is where I acquired my first boyfriend. Off one of the ships. He was here for several months because he was on the ship that was sort of the main ship. Anyhow, and his name was Art Blackmore, and he came from Bulawayo in southern Rhodesia. I got sent off to Halifax, where I was stationed for 2 years. And I was very fortunate that I worked in the Fleet Mail office in downtown Halifax, right behind the main post office, right next door to the ferry dock to go over to Dartmouth, which is very similar to the idea of Vancouver to North Vancouver ferry. That was the idea of it. And there again in Halifax, I was very fortunate. We used to, my girlfriend at that time, her name was Polly. Her and I used to have it lined up so we went dancing every night in the week, because in those days, boys and girls, they would put a notice up on the bulletin board that such and such a ship or army barracks wanted 20 or 30 women to go over for a dance. You'd put your name down. They would send a bus or a truck. Sometimes it would be a truck with benches inside of it. In the wintertime, those kind were darn cold ones. Anyhow, we went away to the dance and had a good time at the dance. They always had refreshments for us. And then at midnight, we're loaded back aboard the bus and we're taken back home. And then down in Halifax, I met my second boyfriend, whose name was Carl Costwell. He was in the Army, a sergeant in the Army down there. And through him being his girlfriend, I got invited to several private homes, which was kind of nice down there, because let's face it, a lot of the private section down there did not like service people, but we went there. And so then after the war, I came back to Vancouver, but I was discharged in Halifax July 31st, 1946. You know, I have very fond memories, and ever since I've been in the was in the Wrens. We've had a Wren association here in Vancouver. Currently, I'm president of the association, have been for the last 3 years, and enjoy it very, very much. And we're just a loose-knit group of women who get together once a month and have speakers come in or slide presentations and that sort of thing. I'm a patriotic Canadian, part of the British Empire. Yeah. I guess the moment in my life when I was the happiest was when my father walked me down the aisle of the Grandview United Church as I headed to the altar to marry my future husband, Art Vigner, because all my friends and relatives were there. The place was packed, and that, I would say, would be one of the happiest times of my life. On November the 4th, 1950, I married Arthur Joseph Vigner.
BCE, you met Arthur Joseph Vigner.
Vigner, right.
Was it over the water cooler? I can't remember.
No, he fell out. I tripped going upstairs where the offices were. And he happened to be in the electrician's shop, which was at the bottom of the stairs. And he turned to Dick Stevens, who was the foreman, it says there, and looked at me and said, "Oh, that's the girl I'm going to marry." So that must have been in the fall, because then the following New Year's Eve, we were at this fella's house, Johnny My Slickie's house, and he came with a girlfriend, and I was by myself, because in those days, well, when it was a company party type thing, you went by yourself. And he got talking to me, and we sat on the step thing in the front hallway and sat and chatted and that sort of thing. And then it was over. I went home. He took his friend home. Marion was her name. Very nice lady. And then, of course, then he phoned me, and we started going out. We drove up British Properties, where there used to be a place to park up there. And that's where he gave me my ring. Proposed marriage up there in British Properties. So then I floated home after that.
So did you answer him right away?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There
was no doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind at all.
So was that love for you?
I think so. Yeah. He was born in 1913. Went to McGee High School, and then in the I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, he went up to Dawson City up in the Yukon, where he obtained work up there. And one of the jobs he had the water wagon up there, which was a big wooden truck. And of course, up in the Yukon, there's no water to the houses. There probably is today. And he would fill this wagon up with water and drive around and sell people their pail of water that they wanted. And he did that for quite a while. And then he left there in 42 to join the Air Force when the war was on. The crew of a bomber smuggled him aboard, and he went over on one of their bombing missions, which he said he did it once. He was never so scared in his life, and he couldn't get out of that plane fast enough when they got back home, but once was enough. So he always admired anybody who had ever been in the bombing crew of these planes that flew over Europe. Yeah, he turned out he was quite happy just to be a mechanic, to keep the engines running and that sort of thing. And for the record, his mom's name was Gertrude Vigner, and she came from Norway. And then his father's name was Joseph Vigner, and he came from some place in Switzerland. And he had two sisters, Marion Wadsworth and Dorothy Menges. So I was taken into a large family there, because they all had 4 children each. And we lived, our first place was at 12 West 10th Avenue in the apartment there. And then about 3 years later, we moved into our first home, and only home actually, because we lived in this house for 37 years at 2756 Grant Street. I got married when I was 26, but then I didn't have my first child till I was 32. There again, my husband worked the afternoon, graveyard shift still. He only went afternoon shift because this is all done on a sign-up once a year. Only 1 year in our married life was my husband on day shift. Anyhow, we found this nice 4-room bungalow at a real cheap price. We paid $6,500 for this 4-room bungalow, fully furnished, because the owner lived up in Nelson and had no wish to come to Vancouver to clear out the furniture. So we were very, very lucky.
How would you describe your relationship with Art?
Oh, we got along very, very well. When he got sick like he did, he used to get terrible, terrible headaches. And he was in Shaughnessy Hospital and all these different places. But part of his problem was he wasn't an alcoholic in the true sense of the word, but every now and then he would drink. But he was what they call a secret drinker. After he passed away, when we were cleaning up the basement, we found Mickey's hidden all over the place, and that sort of thing. The way Art went towards the end, I probably would have divorced him, but we were a generation, we were brought up that you stood by your man through thick and thin, really, you know. Yeah. And then by this time, my husband was starting to wasn't being well, was in and out of hospital and this sort of thing, because Art, he was in the hospital for 7 years, well, under the care of the veterans for 7 years before he did pass away. So in the meantime, I was working part-time all this time. And it was only after he passed away that I went full-time, more full-time hours at the YWCA because my mom, who lived just a mile from us, would come over and stay with the boys when they came home from school. And then in 1969, March the 12th, 1969, Art had a bad cold, which I'd seen him the weekend before, and it was nothing, just a bad cold. Well, evidently he sat up in bed to cough, and there was no air there because his lungs had filled up with fluid, and he basically keeled over dead. So that was quite a shock to everybody because he certainly wasn't ill for that long a time. So it was a combination of double pneumonia and some type of virulent pleurisy he had that called,
What would you say you and Art did right in your relationship together?
Have trust in one another. And you don't have to live in one another's back pockets to have that trust. You know what I mean? Because sometimes just because he goes to the corner store and forgets to come back, it's only maybe because he's bumped into somebody to talk to, or he's seen something else that he wants to look at. But then I hear of some women who get terribly upset if you say you're going to be back in half an hour and you're back in an hour and a half. They get really furious, which I can understand them getting furious, but why think that your husband is off hooking up with another woman at that time? If you can't trust your husband, who can you trust? Well, he was a very friendly fella, very friendly, happy, lucky. I don't know what else to say. How do you marry a person because you like them? He was always quite willing to do things for me and that sort of thing, and good with the boys and that. Many people have said, how come I've never married again? Well, I've kept my eyes open. I still keep my eyes open. But to be honest with you, I haven't even spotted one that I would want to shack up with for the rest of my life. So sometimes it would be nice to have a boyfriend, just to go out for drives or a dinner or something like that. That's one thing, all my jobs I left on my own. I was never fired from any job. And that's kind of a nice feeling in the world today where you hear about so many people being laid off. Well, I laid myself off. Christmas '46, I applied to Woodward's and got a job there working in the Toyland department, which was fun. But then they found out I could type, so then I got moved into the advertising department, where one of my jobs was playing the Christmas music throughout the stores. So if you were in Woodward's in '46 and heard Christmas carols, I was playing them for you. And I always appreciate Woodward's because Christmas Eve, when we all got our final checks, because we knew we were just there, we all got a $5 bonus, which in today's world sounds very, very little. But in those days, in today's world, I guess you could almost say it was like $50. But we got this $5 bonus. So then after that, I started out in the new year and got a job pretty well right away at National Fisheries, which is the fish dock down in Vancouver, where I worked for 3 months in the office there while the girls downstairs were processing the fish. And I worked upstairs and did the timesheets and all those kind of things. And then I got laid off from that because the fishing season was over temporarily. So then I applied to BC Motor Transportation, and I got a job with them, working in the garage at 14th and Cambie. Longtime Vancouver people know where the big bus garage was at 14th and Cambie, and that's where we worked. I guess I was there 2 or 3 years when they then moved us up to Oak Ridge Garage at 41st Oak, where the garage still is today, and there I worked until 1956, the end of January, I think it was, when I left because I was pregnant with my first son. Why people at the YWCA, where I had continued to go down there, being on the Burrard board at one point in time, they heard I was looking for a part-time job, so I got a job working for them down there, typing. Typing's been my forte. I've always liked to consider that I'm a good typist, and nothing would be nicer than to get a sheet of writing, which you can't read most of the time, and figure out how to center it on the paper, how to make your columns and all that sort of thing. So I ended up getting a job with Richard H. Lewis and Company, who was a manufacturer's agent. And I worked there for him, like, I could work 9 to 1 or 10 to 2, so it depended what going on at home or what was going on in the office. Because he was often on the road traveling, but he would send me the orders that I would then get the stuff out of stock and wrap up the packages, walk them over to Woodward's, to the post office up on the second floor there. And sometimes I had quite a load of parcels to get over there and mail for him. So January the 5th, 1972, I went down to it for an interview down Boundary Road to see Claus Deering, who was looking for an office person for Glen Air Electronics that he was running. So I went in there, got the job, nice and close to home, able to get there and no problems with the kids going to school. I started there when there was like about 10 people on staff. 17 and a half years later, when I left, there was like 500 on staff, and today then it grew up even to 2,000. So it's a nice feeling to think of all the typing I did for the engineering staff down there, that's all what helped make their inventions work and this sort of thing. But I enjoyed working at Glen Air. They were a friendly bunch of people. So then, as I say, I retired from there in March 31st, 1989.
What do you like about traveling?
Seeing new things all the time, meeting new people. My very first trip was to the Mediterranean Sea, which I went on all by myself. I ended up with a very nice roommate who happened to come from New Westminster, and she also became the girlfriend of the ship's photographer. So that really pays when you do that, because then you hear all the gossip that's going on aboard the ship. But by doing that, I got to see the island of Malta, which is fascinating. I went to Tunisia in North Africa, over to Rome, the Colosseum, saw all those places over there, the 3 coins in a fountain area, and all that sort of thing. And then over to Athens, went up to the Parthenon, walked around there, went over to Alexandria in Egypt, and then they bussed us into Cairo, where I saw the pyramids for the very first time. And it was such a thrill to think that I was there where things had happened 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. That was great. Another trip I did, I went to England with Billy Shepherd, where we did a bus trip to England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. For 3 weeks that trip was, but we saw everything. We went to Gretna Green, where we saw one of the couples in our group play acted at getting married, and we were all the guests at the wedding. That was fun. If you ever get there, you know, some people run down bus trips, but really when you're on a bus trip, they know where to take you. You get front row seats at all these things you go to. And I went into Edinburgh and I went to Glasgow. I asked the girl about Suckyhall Street, where my mother had grown up. But of course, Suckyhall Street doesn't have houses on it nowadays, evidently. It's a street of fine shops. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the street, but it is there. We went to Loch Lomond. We sailed across the sea over to Ireland, went over to I guess it's your east coast of Ireland, where the wind blew like mad, but just a thrill to be there, and that you were Atlantic Ocean, and all the way across that water, you'd come to Nova Scotia, Canada. And then the other big trip we did was that Effie and I went for 2 weeks to Cairo, Egypt, where we sailed down the Nile River for 5 days. We saw all these statues way out in the country. We went to the Valley of the Kings where it was 100 degrees, drank water all the time, and then when you get back to the hotel, you think, gee, I drank 6 bottles of water and I've only been to the bathroom once. Well, of course, down there, the water has evaporated out of your system, so that's why you... But it is a fascinating place to go. Maybe I lived in the day of Cleopatra or something, because I've always been fascinated with Egyptian history. Then I did another trip down to, in 1988, down to a big naval reunion in Australia and New Zealand. We went to New Zealand first, spent, I think it was 7 days touring around the North Island. Never did get to the South Island because really there was more than enough to see on the North Island. And they treated us very, very well and had fun. Then we flew over to Brisbane where we attended Expo 88. And we were in this hotel off the main street where no cars were allowed, where you walk down into the basement to register to get your hotel room, which was quite different. While we were sitting there in the bar waiting for the rooms to become available, you had some of the Maoris came in dressed in business suits. And I must admit that was kind of strange because I'd seen Maoris on TV dressed in their native clothes, and here they were in business suits. Me, I went over to Tasmania because, as you all know, I read a lot of Harlequin romance books, and a lot of them are set in Tasmania. So I went over there, I stayed in this house, which happens to be one of the oldest houses in Hobart, and I took a bus trip out to Point Arthur, or Fort Arthur, where the penal colony had been 100 years ago, and toured all over the place. Did see one of the Tasmanian devil dogs, and there's certainly something I wouldn't want to meet on a dark night, believe me. No, I like boat cruising. That's my cup of tea. You get aboard there, you unpack your bags, and that's it, sort of thing. And then the food's good. They've made these ships bigger and bigger, and when I think of going on a ship with 3,000 people, I don't think I want to do that. I like a ship with, say, 700 to 1,000 on. That's plenty. Oh yeah, because I've also done cruises around the Caribbean. And that's why last fall when Curacao in Venezuela had all that trouble, that really broke my heart because I've been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. But you go up these hills as you're going into the city where all these shacks are, and believe you me, they are tar paper shacks. And to feel that the rain has washed them all down the hillside, it's just heartbreaking to think about it. And another trip, I went over to China with Eve Baldwin on a boat cruise, believe it or not. Sounds funny, but we went to Hong Kong, overnighted there. The next day flew into Beijing. We were there for 3 days and did bus trips out every day. We went and saw all the different parts, saw Tiananmen Square and all that sort of thing. And while I was in the square, we of course were taking pictures, and there was this couple with a baby taking pictures of one another holding the baby. So I said to them, well, would you like your picture, or sign to them because they couldn't speak English, would you like your baby taken with both of you? Oh yeah, and they knew what that meant. So I took their picture. So I'm turning to walk away. Next thing I know, the kid is stuck in my arms. I would say the kid was maybe a year old. So somewhere in Beijing is my picture holding this couple's little baby boy. I know it was a boy. So that's what I've left behind in Beijing. I really enjoyed Taiwan. That was a fascinating city for getting around. And of course, so much of Taiwan has been Americanized because that's where the Americans were and that sort of thing. We then went to Japan. Nagasaki is in Japan. But I must admit, I did not go ashore. Anybody who knows me very well knows that I do not buy anything Japanese. I still feel the Japanese were not punished enough, not the leaders, not the people. The leaders were not punished enough for what they did to our people during the war. So as my own little protest, I stayed aboard the ship and did not go ashore in Japan. So, and hopefully I'm still going to be able to make a few more trips, which I have done in my life, and I want to do a few more. But to my grandchildren and even my children, as you get older, if you ever have a chance to travel, for heaven's sakes, take it. Because you learn so many, many things. And then when you come home, boy, do you appreciate home. married, I still continued work naturally at BC Electric in those days. And then, as I say, I left in '56 to have Tommy. The following February, I had got myself a part-time job working down by Commercial Drive and Hastings at a place called Pelsman's & Sons. They manufactured chrome tables and chairs. The day I started there, I was pretty darn sure I was pregnant again. So I went and told them this, because I didn't know they wanted to keep me there. After all, I just started. 9 months later I was going. But they were very, very nice. Couldn't have been nicer to me. And said, sure, no problem. So I ended up working there at Pelsman's until September the 30th, 1957. And then October the 9th, 1957, Rodney, my second son, was born. I think I forgot to say that Tommy was born on April the 19th, 1956. To Tom, my oldest, you've always been a good son, and I know you will continue to be a good son no matter whether I'm here or not. I always appreciate the fact that when I helped co-sign your first motorcycle and then your car, I never did have to make a payment for you. You've always paid your bills on time. You've been a credit to any company you've ever worked for. I know you were absolutely shattered when Gaynor left you, but as far as I'm concerned, the biggest loser was Gaynor, because she lost a good man. And I'm still hopeful that sometime in the future you will find another gal to share your life with. In the meantime, take it easy on that computer and quit working such long hours all the time, if you can. Because always remember, Tom, you're over 40 now, and that's considered over the hill, so you don't quite have that much time left in your life. But I do hope you have a good 50 years yet to sit back and enjoy all those RRSPs that you're putting together. And I'm also very fortunate that my oldest boy, Tom, who is married and divorced, lives over at Walnut Grove area of Langley, where he has a nice size house there. He recently, about 10 months ago, discovered computers, and he got himself a computer. Well, now Tommy is having an absolute ball with that darn thing. He plays games with his friends who live in other parts of the Lower Mainland here, and he's really become interested in it. His current job at the moment, he is head dispatcher with Squamish Freight Lines, which is just down along River Road here, over close to the Dees Island Tunnel. And he loves that, not having to go over the Portman Bridge to go to work anymore. They moved down there a couple of years ago into a brand new warehouse. The only trouble is, because he is so good, he spends long hours. 12, 14 hours a day are nothing to him, dispatching trucks and shipments and all that sort of thing. Tom, what I like best about you is your thoughtfulness to others. Anytime I ever brought any of my older friends around, you're always so very nice, polite, and pleasant to them. Never forget that when you hold the door open for an older person, that could be your mother you're holding the door for. Tom, always remember your mom loves you very much. And to my second son, Rodney, I just would like to say that you brought a lot of joy into my life. First of all, you gave me a very nice daughter-in-law, Liz, who, by the way, for everybody's information, comes of good Hungarian stock. In the meantime, Rodney, you've also worked hard at your job. You have a very good reputation as a very safety-conscious driver, and I hope that stands you in good stead until the days of your retirement. You never take chances when you're driving. I've always noticed that and appreciated it. And I hope that continues, and that you continue to have your usual smiling face and get along with everybody like you've always done. My other son, Rodney, he is also happy now that he is along River Road now, because he works for Van Camp. And he used to be stationed in Burnaby, but he got moved out here along River Road too, not too far from where his brother works, a driving truck for Van Camp. He's been there for over 10 years now, quite enjoys it, And I know he has a very good reputation of being a very safe driver. He checks his load and never takes more than he's supposed to take, and this sort of thing. And sometimes he does trips to the States. Rodney, what I like best about you is that when I phone and say I have 4 little jobs to do, that you don't take too long to get over here to do them, because I find it very frustrating when I can't change a light bulb up in the ceiling because I'm not one to climb ladders anymore. It is very much appreciated. And really, I never mind babysitting Sparky and the bird. So keep up the good work. Rodney, your greatest strength is, I think, your children. You give a lot of time to them, and I'm sure they are going to benefit from that in the years to come as they go down life's pathways. I'm supposed to put it in plain English, Rodney. You are a good father. And always remember, Rodney, I love you very much. Him and Liz live about 6 blocks from where I do, so I do see them off and on. And to my daughter-in-law, Liz, I say thank you for being the daughter-in-law you have been. You've always been there when I needed you, and hopefully I've always been there when you needed me. You have 3 great kids. Appreciate them. Appreciate your husband. And enjoy life as you go along, doing your thing as well. Just remember, Liz, you've been a great daughter-in-law, and I love you. Okay. I enjoy doing things with my grandchildren. I've quite happy. I've signed up sometimes when they've got a class field trip coming out, and I go out and drive a carload of 3 or 4 kids, and they're fun because what you do there, you sit there, but don't you talk. Listen to them. You learn an awful lot of things, good, bad, and indifferent. My granddaughter, April, who being the only girl in the family is our pride and joy, naturally. She is now in her 2nd year at Guilford Park Secondary High School, and a very smart gal, and is on their honor roll for the 2nd time this year. She wants to be a pediatrician. Whether she will, I don't know. She's certainly got the brains to do it, but getting in there and seeing sick little babies might not be as great, but she's very good. She babysits, and everybody enjoys her. April, my very first grandchild and my only granddaughter. She is now 14 years old. She's about 5'8", slim as a beanpole, but looks good with it. She's in grade 10 at Guilford Park Secondary and doing very, very well in school. You're an honor student, and it's so nice to have that in the family. And I hope it keeps up that for the rest of your years in high school anyways. I know you want to be a pediatrician, but it's a long road to go, April, to get that far. But I hope you will. And knowing your determination in life, you will get that far. So all I can say is I love you very much, and I wish you all the very, very best in the future, and continue to be the pleasant, happy-go-lucky girl you are today. And please, quit hitting your brothers all the time. Put that. Always remember, April, your grandmother, or Granny as I'm called, is very, very proud of you. Keep up the good life. And then there's Rodney, who's now in his 1st year at Guilford Park Secondary School. And he's having a bit of a struggle, but thanks to his mom and dad's help, he's getting there. He plays hockey. He's been playing hockey for 5-6 years now. Recently just did a trip down to Seattle, Washington, where they were in a tournament down there. And I'm glad to report, like all of this team from Surrey, they came first. So they all got a very nice trophy and his medal for around his neck. So I shouldn't have done that, should I? So we're very proud, and he enjoys skating. And to my first grandson, Rodney Jr., so you know who I'm talking about, I just wish you all the very, very best in the future. I know and realize you're having a bit of struggle at school these days on your marks, But then life is a struggle, and if you didn't struggle now, you wouldn't know how to cope with it. This way, you're learning by doing your homework with the help of your mom and dad, and even granny sometimes. It helps to get there. Never hesitate to ask for help throughout life's roads. I have thoroughly enjoyed watching you play hockey. I'm only sorry I can't get to all the games. But I lead a social life too, so I'm not always able, but I certainly get to most of them. And it is such a joy to watch you, the way you can skate around that ice. So easy and natural. You just make me green with envy, because I could never do it when I was your age. And today, I'm darn sure I couldn't do it. You, at one point in time, you've been thinking you want to be a fireman. Whether you will or not, I don't know. Because like April and her pediatrician, being a fireman is a lot of hard work, a lot of education is required, and all these things along life's pathways. But I'm sure you are going to do your very, very best and get there in the end, no matter what it is you end up doing as far as a job is concerned. I know you've had several girlfriends, and I'm sure with those eyelashes of yours, you're going to have many more girlfriends. But please, always treat them with respect. And remember, when a girl says no, she means no. So back off, but continue to enjoy life, as I'm sure you will. And I love you very much. And then there's, last but not least, there's Nicholas, who's now 8 years old and will be 9 in April. He's in grade 3 at school and just enjoying life completely. Fortunately, he's still into Legos and those kind of things, but he also loves his games that he plays, video games that he plays on TV. Nicholas Colton Vigner, I love you very much. You don't know what you want to do yet. Right now you're busy with all your Pokemon stuff and your games on TV and all the rest of it, and you are busy enjoying life. And it's just so nice to see you doing that. But at the same time, I know you are working hard in school, and every day you are learning something new. You have no wish really yet about what you want to do when you go out into the big bad world and start working for a living. But whatever you do, do your very best at all times. As I've told you before, I hope I'm going to live for another 20 years, because then you would be 28, maybe getting married, and Granny would be there to dance with you at your wedding. And don't worry, in 20 years' time, you will certainly know how to dance, I'm sure. Mind you, I might be in a wheelchair, so we'll have to do a wheelchair dance, but we'll have fun anyways. Remember, Nicholas, I love you very much, and especially your cuddles. What can I say about you, Norman, eh? Except that you've had a lot of tough breaks in your life, and I hope it continues to do pretty good for you. I don't know. But you've always worked steady, you've always done well. Maybe not money-wise, but you do okay otherwise. And I'm sure your mom, Shirley, is very, very proud of you. And I love you very much too. That's all. And to all my other relatives, especially the 17 cousins that came to our get-together in November 1999, here's wishing you all the very best in life. I myself am very proud of every one of you, because none of us have ever been in trouble with the law, outside of maybe a few traffic tickets or speeding tickets maybe, which I don't get told about. Anyways, take care of all of you, and don't forget to love your children each and every day. And my friends, I feel very, very honored to have some super friends over the years, whether I knew them at BC Electric, YWCA, or NA Electronics, or even out here in Surrey after I retired. I feel very, very thrilled to have so many people I can call a friend. So good luck to all of you. always wanted to live to the year 2000, and I made it. So now I'm aiming for 2010, maybe even 2015, who knows? I don't really think I'll make 2024, not unless I'm able to move around. Do I want to go that long? But I keep active, but I'm not into doing exercises, I must admit. I watch what I eat, but the old weight just sits there. So I've always seemed to have had good health. I don't recall ever being really ill or anything like that, and I did have breast cancer in 1972. As I say, I started in Glen Eyre in January. February I went to the doctor because I had a very sore spot on one side of my breast. To make a long story short, the following June, X-ray technician said to Dr. Zach, who was my doctor at the time, that I think you better have a look. So a Dr. Goldman, who was a surgeon, had a look. And I woke up in the Vancouver General Hospital being told, sorry, Mrs. Vigner, we've had to take your breast. You've had cancer. And of course, it was a real radical one, right down to the rib cage. So therefore, I was in the hospital for 16 days. And you don't stay in the hospital for 16 days these days anymore for breast surgery, that's for sure. I've always been upbeat on it. I mean, to me, this is just a momentary blimp that God has sent you, and that it's up to you to, as they say in football, you take the ball and run, and that's just what I did. So I was very fortunate. And of course, the second time when I had cancer, by this time I had 2 grandchildren. I wanted to stay alive to see them grow up. So I think if you ever get any disease, cancer is a good one because they really keep on top of you. You get into their files and they'll notify you, and every now and then my doctor, Dr. Mark Green's office will call me, and I am called in to get pap smears done because I told him once I'd had a hysterectomy, but he said that didn't make any difference. There's still enough there that they want to check to make sure that there's no cancer growing down there. So I didn't care. I was still alive, and I wanted to stay alive. I had 2 teenage boys to finish growing up, and that sort of thing. But then in 1990, January the 5th again, is when I lost my second breast. What they found out after a mammogram had been done was cancer spots there growing. And considering the kind of cancer they had had in my other breast, that they recommended that I lose my breast. But I could have reconstruction. Well, they could reconstruct on one side and not on the other side because it was right to the rib cage. So what was the use? So I didn't bother doing anything. But I've never found it a handicap not having them. I should be telling you all my secrets. My family, we grew up with dogs. We always had a dog in the house. And Tommy, my oldest boy, he had this dog he had from a pup. Kodiak was his name. He's in this picture right here. And all of a sudden, Kodiak one night was not well, so Tommy takes him over to one of those 24-hour vets over in Langley City. And to make a long story short, his insides had got twisted up, and even if they did an operation, they wouldn't guarantee it would work. And Kodiak was 12 years old, so Tom had to have him put to sleep. So then he phoned me at 2:30 in the morning to tell me this, so 2 of us are crying for an hour at 2:30 in the morning, because we've always taken our pets as they're a member of the family, you know. And Kodiak was a good dog. He was a dog you could talk to and know what you're talking about. Because even my sister Shirley, who passed away in 1979 from brain cancer, she had a dog, Misty. And so anyhow, I got the job to take Misty to the SPCA down in Delta to get them to either get rid of him or, adopt him out or put him to sleep. And Misty was a sweetheart. She's a great big St. Bernard. and a sweetheart of a dog that you could talk to, and she'd growl. She knew what you were talking about. So when I took her in there and cried all the way home, I thought, well, boy, if the cops stop me, they're going to get one sobbing female. But it was a shame. But unfortunately, I mean, I just had a 33-foot lot. She needed more room than that. So even my own dog, Skippy over there, his rear end went on him. And I had to take him to the vet, where they kept him overnight to check him all out and that. And they said there was no hope for him too. So, and of course I'm phoning from work. So I'm phoning from work, and the boss comes in, what's the matter? And I'm sitting there with tears streaming down my face. And I just had to tell him to put my dog to sleep. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to say goodbye to Skippy?
No, I didn't. I don't think I wanted to. Because I thought, well, no, if I go out there, he knows, he'll think he's coming home. And he'd been to this vet's place before, and they were always treated him well. He knew them all, so I didn't worry about that part, yeah. And I've made many good friends out here. I go to both the Newton Senior Center and Sunrise Pavilion. And then I'm involved with my Wren's Association still, once a month. I also volunteer in the cancer office. I also do reach to recovery visits. And just enjoy life. And of course, that's part of life, and that's part of being a volunteer, that you be willing to do the job, I think. And I've never regretted it. I've been a volunteer all of my life, and I thoroughly enjoy it, and I recommend it to anybody. Because even if you only do a little bit of volunteering, it's better than nothing at all. And so many people do nothing, and then they squawk because there's nothing in their lives to do, especially when they get older. And I can think of several people I know, if they'd only get off their butt, move down, and do things out in the community, they would live longer and be better. I think it makes you live longer, it makes you be in better health, because you're also worrying about other people, not about yourself. And I think that has a lot to do with it, yeah. Most people are very kind, very interested in other parts of the world and other people. Yeah, you get a few cases that rub you the wrong way. Well, those kind of people you just walk away from and don't have anything to do with them, sort of thing. At least I don't, anyhow. Because there are some people who say things the wrong way, or I guess you can take them the wrong way, I don't know. And of course you always bump into some who know everything. And they get quite surprised that they don't know a hell of a lot about Canada. And you have the great joy of setting them straight. I've always been telling you kids how to get along with everybody. Short, fat, skinny, tall, no matter what color their skin is, be friends with everybody. Because, I mean, it's the way of life, for heaven's sakes. Life wouldn't be very good if nobody squawked about anything, so you just take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes they've got a genuine complaint. So you listen and correct it. Make them happy and make yourself happy too, yeah. So
the truth is the truth, and there's nothing you can do about it. And
there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But then I'm a firm believer too, sometimes a little white lie doesn't hurt. Sometimes a little white lie helps. You know, as long as you don't let it grow. That's all it is, just a little white lie. And you do it once and that's it. The way I deal with my anger is to turn away and ignore that person as much as I can for the rest of my life. You know, I've only ever had to do that a couple of times in my life, so most of the time I get along very well with everybody. The way you can tell I'm angry is because I will maybe shout, or maybe I'll just turn and walk away. I'm not going to stay and argue with you if I figure I'm right. Yeah. The time in my life I felt most betrayed was when a receptionist that I had hired to work in the office at Glen Air Electronics turned around after being there for, let's say, 6 months. I'm not sure of the time, but less than a year, so maybe around 6 months. And she handed her notice in to the boss and said that she was leaving because she couldn't get along with me. And I still to this day do not know what I did wrong to that girl. But that left me very bewildered, I'll tell you right now. Because I asked the other people in the office and nobody had any problems with me. So what she didn't like me, I don't know. The way I make a decision is I just think of the pros and cons and then just go with what my heart tells me to do. And the pocketbook.
So what's your favorite drink?
Your rum. But not rum and Coke. I like rum and just rum with some hot water. Hot rums are always nice, yeah. Yeah, but no, really my favorite drink of all times is Crown Royal with 7-Up in it, yeah. My favorite food? Oh, fish. I like my fish. Yeah, oysters, salmon, and that sort of stuff.
So if I was to pop out right now to the fish store, what would you want me to buy?
Salmon.
Salmon.
Yeah.
And then how would we prepare it?
I would just bake it in the oven. Yeah, I wouldn't fry it, I don't think. No, baking it's much nicer. Yeah.
Any spices?
A little bit, but not much. But I would like a sauce for the top of it, like a just plain old white sauce as far as that goes. But just a little bit, not an awful lot.
What kind of spice would you put on it when you bake it? Is it dill or something, or?
Dill, lemon juice. I like my lemon juice in there, yeah. But I'm not a great one for spicing up my food, that's for sure. I always enjoy these potluck dinners because I'm no cook. I'll be the one who goes and buys a bag of salad at the Safeway. Sometimes I shock them and cook something, but most of the time I don't. Who says there isn't a heaven or something, someplace out there? Oh my God, it's just the same as everybody else's. He's waiting for you up there. And I'm a firm believer if you ask him for things or to help you, that he listens to you. I really do. I mean, and they go on and on about Jesus coming back to earth. Well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. I don't. I think it's what we're doing down here on earth is what you do, you know, what really counts. The philosophy of my life has been to enjoy it, which I feel I've done pretty good at enjoying it. God bless you all. Okay, many thanks for you coming over today. It's been a real pleasure having you, and have a safe trip home.